In the heart of San Francisco, a city famous for its engineering marvels, stands a monument to failure. A $750 million luxury skyscraper that has become the punchline to a very expensive joke. This is the Millennium Tower, a 58-story testament to what happens when ambition, greed, and terrible engineering collide. It is a building that began selling dreams, but is now famous for one thing: sinking and tilting. And for years, nobody could figure out how to stop it. This is not just the story of a flawed building. It is the story of a slow-motion disaster, a cascade of errors that created a modern-day Leaning Tower of Pisa in one of the most earthquake-prone cities on Earth. So how did this happen? How do you build a state-of-the-art skyscraper that starts sinking the moment it is finished? The answer is a shocking tale of shortcuts, blame games, and a series of catastrophic miscalculations. This is the terrible engineering behind San Francisco's sinking skyscraper. When the Millennium Tower opened in 2009, it was the pinnacle of luxury. It was the tallest residential building in the city, offering breathtaking views and world-class amenities. It stood as a symbol of the new glittering San Francisco. But beneath the surface, a problem was taking root, a very, very slow problem. By 2016, the secret was out. The building was not just settling as all buildings do, it was sinking, and it was sinking unevenly. The data was undeniable. The tower had sunk by over 16 inches and was tilting by more than 1 foot at its peak. Residents who had paid millions for their apartments started noticing strange things: marbles rolling to one corner of the room, doors that would not close properly, cracks appearing in the walls of the underground garage. The symbol of luxury had become a source of constant anxiety. The public and the residents demanded answers. How could a brand new $750 million skyscraper be fundamentally broken? The answer, it turns out, was buried 80 feet underground. To understand this disaster, you have to understand the ground beneath San Francisco. Much of the downtown area is built on reclaimed land, a mix of sand, mud, and debris dumped into the bay over a century ago. It is soft, unstable, and prone to liquefaction during an earthquake. Deep beneath this mushy layer, about 200 feet down, is solid bedrock, the kind of rock you want to anchor a skyscraper to. Most of the other tall buildings in the area, like the Salesforce Tower, have foundations that go all the way down to this bedrock. They use what are called end-bearing piles. Think of them as giant concrete and steel stilts, transferring the immense weight of the building directly onto the solid rock. It is the safest, most stable, and most expensive way to build. The Millennium Tower did not do this. If you want to understand more stories of incredible engineering, both good and bad, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We post new deep dives every single week. Instead of drilling down to bedrock, the engineers of the Millennium Tower chose a cheaper, faster alternative: friction piles. Instead of resting on solid rock, these piles only went down about 80 feet into a dense layer of sand and clay. The idea is that the friction between the sides of the piles and the surrounding soil would be enough to hold the building up. It is like trying to stand a pencil on its tip versus shoving it deep into a jar of sand. The sand holds it up, but it is not nearly as stable. This was the original sin of the Millennium Tower's design, a cost-saving gamble on unstable ground. For a while it seemed to work. But the developers and engineers had either ignored or underestimated another massive project happening right next door: the Transbay Transit Center. It was a colossal undertaking, involving the excavation of a hole the size of an aircraft carrier 60 feet deep. To dig that hole, the construction crews had to pump out millions of gallons of groundwater, a process called dewatering. That pumping had a catastrophic effect on the soil under the Millennium Tower. The Old Bay clay, the layer the tower was essentially floating on, began to compress and shift as the water was removed. The foundation, which was already under-designed, lost its support. The sinking, which was already happening, accelerated. The blame game began immediately. The tower's developer, Millennium Partners, sued the Transbay Authority, claiming their excavation was the sole cause of the problem. The Transbay Authority fired back, arguing the tower's flawed foundation was a disaster waiting to happen, and they had simply exposed it. Residents sued everyone. It was a legal and public relations nightmare. But while the lawyers argued, the building kept sinking. It became clear that something had to be done. A fix was needed. And that's when the story went from a complete disaster to a full-blown farce. The proposed solution, known as the perimeter pile upgrade, was a $100 million plan to finally do what should have been done in the first place: anchor the building to bedrock. The plan was to install 52 new piles around the perimeter of the building, drilling them 250 feet down into the solid rock. These new piles would take on some of the building's weight and hopefully stop the sinking. It was a complex, expensive, and delicate operation. In 2021, the work began. But almost immediately, something went terribly wrong. The very act of drilling the holes for the new piles was vibrating the ground and further disturbing the soil. The tower, which was supposed to be saved by this fix, started sinking faster. In just a few months, it sank another full inch and tilted even more. It was an engineering nightmare of epic proportions. The cure was making the disease worse. Work was immediately halted. The city, the developers, and the terrified residents were back to square one. But now the problem was more urgent. The building was more unstable than ever. After months of reevaluation, a revised, less invasive drilling method was approved, and the project was cautiously restarted. As of today, the fix is partially complete. The new piles have been installed and have taken on some of the building's load. The good news is that the sinking has slowed dramatically, almost to a halt. The building is now considered structurally sound by the city's engineers, but the problem isn't solved. The tower is still tilted, it has been stabilized but not straightened. It will forever be the leaning tower of San Francisco, a permanent scar on the skyline. So what was the terrible engineering behind this $750 million failure? It was not one single mistake, it was a cascade of them. It was the initial fatal decision to cut corners on the foundation, a gamble taken to save time and money. It was the failure to account for the impact of a massive construction project next door. And it was the shocking incompetence of a repair plan that initially made the problem worse. It is a story about what happens when the pressure to build bigger, faster, and cheaper overrides the fundamental principles of good engineering. The Millennium Tower stands today not as a symbol of luxury, but as a 58-story, $750 million warning. A warning that in the race to the sky, you can never ever forget the ground beneath your feet.